Welcome to our study on the book of Romans. This is Sonship Orientation, and this is session 101. We've been finishing up the things that we've been looking at in level 2 of our education. In level 2, lots of things are happening. Now what I'm going to do is make a couple of comments to you about things that we have not yet said about level 2. Then we're going to do a very basic review, because now we've covered enough information that if I don't do the review now, it'll just become massive later on. So I thought this would be a good place to do this. I've included it in your notes, which is why your notes are longer than normal. They're normally about 8 pages. Today I think you've got 16. So you've got quite a bit there. So let me go over these things, though, that we need to hear and need to understand. And as I said to you, there's a couple of issues there that we have not covered before, and I do want to mention those to you. First of all, you found out of all these things that are happening in level 2, you found out that you have a conversation in the heavenly places. And I'm going to remind you again about what that word conversation is. It has to do with your conduct and behavior as it has an impact and an influence on others. Originally, that word conversation also included how you presented yourself. And the reason that comes up in level 2 is because in level 2 you find out you have a reputation in the heavenly places, that your conduct and behavior has a bearing on. And through even just now, I'm saying in a level 2 son, just an indiscretion would allow him to damage his reputation. And so you're given subtlety in the phase 1 of that to help you see below the surface on things, and then that sets you up for the knowledge and the discretion in phase 2. Now I do want to talk about this thing about conversation. So here it is. A general course of manners, behavior, deportment, especially as it respects morals. And the reason I'm bringing this up to you is because I showed you when we covered this that everybody wants to take that word conversation and make it the word citizenship. And that's not what's being talked about here. This is not about we're all citizens of heaven. That couldn't be further away from what's really happening. And by the way, when I pulled this out of George Crabb's book of English synonyms, it was written back in the 1800s. Back when people really understood the language and were precise in their terminology, and this book was written. It's a great book. But now here's the deal. When he wrote that about conversation, he wrote this, and I put it in parentheses. As an example, he wrote, "Let your conversation be as becometh the gospel," and then he cites Philippians 1. I thought, man, even George Crabb understood what conversation was about in Philippians, even if the scholars today don't. So I'm going to give you a couple of references on that. Here's that Philippians 1 reference. "Only let your conversation be as it becometh the gospel of Christ, that rather I come and see you, or else be absent, I may hear of your affairs, that you stand fast in one spirit, with one mind, striving together for the faith of the gospel." So you can see here, this isn't about your citizenship, right? That's about your conduct and about your behavior, your deportment. All right, now if he starts out with that in Philippians 1, look what he's going to do now by the time he gets into Philippians 3. "For our conversation is in heaven." That's the same conversation he was talking about in chapter 1. The subject matter hasn't changed. So to suddenly rip that word out and replace it with citizenship is a grievous error. Okay, now with that, let me just remind you again about reputation. And I know everybody's well aware of that by now. Don't need to review that with you. But here's the part I do want to say, that when you talk to anybody about their reputation, that is usually an adult issue, not a childhood issue. I know that kids can act up and people may think badly about them, but we very seldom would ever say to a child, you're going to ruin your reputation. Do you know why? You have to have one before you can ruin it. It takes time to build a reputation. So that's a word that's normally reserved for adults. And so when you're talked to about a reputation, well, then you know he's talking to you in adult language and in an adult style. And that's the way that should be. When we followed that doctrine over into Israel's program, we found what we're looking at in Philippians here. Here's where it was in Israel's program, Proverbs 22:1. A good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, and loving favor rather than silver or gold. That good name, that's your reputation, isn't it? I mean, you may not use that word. Now, I'm just using that word as the umbrella for all that. But that good name, by the way, is not restricted to just having a good reputation among, say, you know, your partners in a business, or your schoolmates, or your neighbors. Not in that earthly sense, but this is about having a good reputation in your Heavenly Father's business. And that means, for the most part, the people you're going to have that good reputation with are sitting in this room, or other Sonship believers around the country. And so that's the reputation that we're going to have as far as people are concerned. But you're also told in level 2 that you have a reputation with the angels, both good and bad up there, and that the things that you do. Now, the policy of evil, and here's one of the things that I did not bring out the last time, but the policy of evil, if you look at this, a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, and loving favor than silver and gold. The reason that's mentioned that way is because in level 2, it won't be this way for all of you, but in level 2, the policy of evil is going to use as an allurement to get you away from your sonship money. For me, that will be a bigger issue than for you, because an opportunity may well come along in which I have the chance to go make a lot of money, but guess what? It won't be in conjunction with sonship. And by the time phase 2 of level 2 kicks in, you know, what kind of condition will I be in? And that'll determine how appealing that policy of evil is. So I already know that's something that could come on the horizon, and it may be that way for you too. But that's the reason that it's compared this way. It's not just that, you know, a good name is rather to be chosen than these things. He's talking about a real choice here. You have a reputation in the heavenlies that you can keep, or you have a chance to go make a lot of money. And you're going to make a choice about that. So that's a very real possibility. I just bring that up. Now, again, it may not be that way for everyone, but it will be that way for some. Now, there's something else that I want you to look at, and that is in Proverbs 23. Here it is. When thou sittest to eat with a ruler, consider diligently what is put before thee, and put a knife to thy throat if thou be a man given to appetite. Now, maybe I should read that verse again. And put a knife to thy throat if thou be a man given to appetite. Be not desirous of his dainties, for they are deceitful meat. Labor not to be rich. Cease from thine own wisdom. Wilt thou set thine eyes upon that which is not? For riches certainly make themselves wings. They fly away as an eagle toward heaven. Eat thou not the bread of him that hath an evil eye, neither desire thou his dainty meats. Now, you understand where we are. Let me back you up. You're in Proverbs 23. You know what that is. What is that? That's right. That's the doctrine that applies to Israel's program. That's not an exhortation for us. That's not even an exhortation. That's doctrine for them. Now, you think about the position they're going to be in out here in the day of wrath, that they're going to be poor, they're going to have lost everything they had, they can't buy or sell without the mark, and now you know what you've got? You've got a ruler, someone with the authority to make things different. bringing them in and saying, look, let's sit down here, let's have a meal together, and let me make you an offer. If you'll come out of that rebellious remnant, look, can you see what would be said here? Those rulers would say, this guy, we know him as the Antichrist, but you know what? To them, he's going to look a whole lot like the Messiah. He put down our enemies, 3 nations. He helped us rebuild our temple. We've restarted the sacrificial system. This is the religion of your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Come back. We can change your lot in life. You don't have to be on the run and suffer. And that's going to be a very real issue for them. And so when he says that, I want you to notice in verse 3, he uses that word, be not desirous of his dainties. I had this picture of his pinky up while he's sipping his tea, but, when he says, when thou sittest to eat with a ruler, for the remnant, now, I know this is doctrine for the remnant, I'm making that clear, but for the remnant, who they sit down to eat a meal with is going to impact their reputation. Take a look at the rest of this verse, this passage. Verse 6, eat thou not the bread of him that hath an evil eye. Forget about what that conjures up in your thinking about an evil eye. Bible's talking about something else here. Neither, here's that word again, desire thou his dainty meats. Remember that previous thing? It says, verse 3, be not desirous of his dainties. He closed that, neither desire his dainty meats. He says, I know he's going to offer you something that's very attractive for you here and something that's really going to take the pressure off of you, but you need to understand, remember what he just told in the previous chapter, choose a good name rather than riches. And now he's going to enlarge on that and say, who you sit down and eat and drink with is going to have a bearing on your own reputation. Now you already know something about that. Let me take you back to the old John Wayne movies. John Wayne would be in the saloon, and here comes his nemesis in whatever movie you want to talk about, and he comes in and he goes, I'm going to buy you a drink. And you know what John Wayne says? No. Because he's not going to eat or drink with just anybody, right? This guy's his enemy. He knows it, and he doesn't want to do that. Now, I'm just using the John Wayne movie. I'm not trying to pretend you can get doctrine out of a John Wayne movie. Unless you're part of the remnant. I think they'll watch all the John Wayne movies and get their doctrine. Kidding. But here's my point. We know even in just regular life that if somebody walked in and saw us at the table with some folks, they would immediately categorize us in a certain way. And that may be good or it may not be good. But our reputation is at stake when those kinds of things happen. And when someone sees that, I mean, they may go around saying, you'll never guess who I saw Bertha with the other day. And then, and then there it goes, Well, now, when you get to level 2, we're not worried about what men on this planet, the world at large thinks, or even the apostate, system that's at work today. What we're really concerned with is our reputation up there in the heavenly places. Okay. And I just want to say that just to kind of drive home the point that riches is going to be one of the issues. And then, of course, just the simple thing. See, that would be an indiscretion. Just sitting down and having the meal. That would be an indiscretion. Okay. Now, in a similar way, folks, Paul talks to Timothy about the same thing. Remember, we're not going to take a verse over there, but you remember when he talks to Timothy and he says, he talks about filthy lucre and about the place of money and all that kind of business, because he knows to Timothy and to that assembly, there is an attack that's going to come from the policy of evil to say, you know what, you have a chance to really better yourself in the world, but you'll just need to step away from this. Now, it's easy for me to stand here now and talk about that, but when that comes, for some folks, that won't be as easy a decision. People make decisions based on money every single day of their life, and we're educated to think that way. Very seldom does someone turn down a job with more money for a job. Now, sometimes a guy, if he's doing what he loves to do, he's not going to quit doing that just to make more money somewhere else. He loves what he does. But in sonship, you just have to understand that's part of what the policy of evil is going to be doing. And when you talk about that reputation being impinged by those that you're going to hang around, well, there's something else that you need to know about that, and that is, as the policy of evil seeks to corrupt that reputation. Oh, by the way, let me tell you this about this. Let's go ahead and put these up on the board. Just not going to fill them in yet. I will, because we're going to have to see all three of them here before it's over. When we get over here to level 2, and you've got subtlety here, knowledge and discretion here. When you get into phase 2, you really are going to begin, yeah, it started before then, but you really are going to begin to manifest that reputation. This is where it really gains strength to really make an impact up there. And I know that you're eager to know how exactly are we going to impact those good and bad angels up there. And we are going to talk about that. But this is where it really gets revved up and starts going. And now I need you to know this. When it does, your Heavenly Father begins to do something that has never been done before. And it's critical that it starts getting done right here. And if you commit an indiscretion, what He's engaged in doing comes to a sudden stop, and it gets shut down. So there really is something, and I'm not telling you what that is yet on purpose, because I have more to say about it before we talk about what that is. But that's one of those issues that we haven't talked about at all. And but we're going to talk about that shortly. We are going to get to that. What I got left here? Okay. So yes, a son needs to be careful. The policy of evil is after him. Let me ask you a question. If a son gets caught in an indiscretion, can he recover from that? Yes, absolutely he can. But now listen to me carefully. I'm just going to make this statement about it and let it go. Whatever you have heard me say about the consequences of an indiscretion, it's worse than I have said to you. You just need to know that. You say, well, you've made it sound pretty bad. I haven't given you the whole story on that. It's worse. But I'm not too worried about telling you all about it now, because when we get to that part in the doctrine, you'll see it. And then you'll know. I'm just telling you now that when we get over there, I don't want you to come to me and say, this is worse than you ever led us to believe. I'm telling you now. It is. Okay. Now, okay, Gloria says we knew that. Okay. All right, well, great. That's great. Now, here's what I want you to look. Let's look back. Proverbs 23. Where are we here? I know I kind of got ahead of that, didn't I? There we are. Proverbs 23. Let's see. When thou sittest to eat with a ruler, consider diligently what is before thee. What is he asking you to employ when he says consider diligently? What does that mean? Consider diligently. All right. Someone says make a wise decision. Someone says think about it. What did you say? Okay, there you go. All those answers are right. My next question was going to be, where in the curriculum are you being asked to pull from? And you're being asked to pull from right here, from discretion. You're going to be counting on this to be able to do that, to diligently consider. In other words, yeah, you are going to think about it. That's a true and accurate statement. And wisdom, yes, that's true and accurate. But the part of the curriculum that you're going to do is, I'm going to have to see below the surface here. This is not just me sitting down with a meal. This has meaning behind it. Me sitting down with this person is impacting me. That's what discretion brings to your understanding in that. Okay, now, and now I've kind of caught myself up, because when we were at the end of the last session, one of the last verses I showed you was this one right here. I'm sorry. Make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man shalt thou not go, lest thou learn his ways and get a snare to thy soul. And we talked about, if you hang out with this angry man, it's going to have an impact on how you are perceived. And even with the angels. Even with the angels. And here's the other danger. Lest thou learn his ways and get a snare to thy soul. Well, have you ever spent time with a group of people you don't normally spend time with, and even though it's not on purpose on your part, there are little phrases or things that you just automatically pick up and you start integrating into that. I can remember when my parents, my grandparents lived up in the Ozark Mountains in Arkansas, out in the country. They had 80 acres, they farmed. My grandpa worked at Campbell's Soup, and then he came home and he worked the farm, and my grandma worked the farm, and they did everything from chickens to pigs to cattle and butcher them out, that whole bit, and plowed and canned every. I remember when they would harvest stuff, Grandma would have those pressure cookers going on the stove, and it'd be hotter than a 6-shooter in there. They didn't have air conditioning, and they had all the windows up, and you were praying for a breeze. And I mean, it was work. Oh boy, was it work. And then she'd make jellies and jams and put that paraffin wax on the top of them. And I remember at home, we'd always have to, if you open that jar up new, you'd have to dig that wax out of there. And but I'm telling you that to say, I would go up there and spend a month of the summer, every summer with them. That brings back a lot of memories. Every summer, my grandma would say, "Oh, Michael, you look so good. I was worried about you last summer. You were so thin, but you just have fleshed out, and you look so good this year." And the next year, I got the same speech. And the next year, I got the same speech. And I thought, man, 5 years ago, I must have just been at death's door. Because every year, I've evidently gotten better. And that was kind of funny to me, Or I'd go out the door, and my grandma would say, "Don't get on a snake." And I thought, oh, darn, I was going to do that, Are you kidding? 10 bikers couldn't throw a snake on me. I would have walked on water to get away from it. Don't get on a snake. It's like, it makes me think of those little triangle signs they hang in the back window of their car that says, "Caution, baby on board." And I always look at Bill and I go, oh, I was going to ram them. Oh, shoot. I got a baby in there. Dadgummit, because I was just going to slam right into him. What do you think I'm thinking? I'm thinking, I got to watch out for you. You got a baby in the car? You're way more likely to be distracted than I am. Turn that sign around and you look at it. Okay, enough of my tirade. Okay, let me get back to this. All those memories, man, I tell you. This is preaching, isn't it? My parents had come and picked me up, and I can remember my mom, I said something to my mom, and she said, "What'd you say?" And I said, "Are you deaf?" And she went, "Are you deaf?" Oh, she hated that. You know where I got that from? My grandmother. Got it from my grandmother. And oh, my mother's like, "I hear the word ear come out of your mouth again, you're dead." Oh, she didn't like that. But I didn't mean to pick it up. I just heard it for a month. Because she told my grandpa that every day. But I couldn't, I didn't try to do it. It just happened. Pam's been staying with us lately. She's not here today. It's our day off. Kidding. She'll hate it she'll love it when she hears that. Tuesday, I'm in Glen Rose, and I made a statement I have never made before. I used the word tacky. As soon as it came out of my mouth, I knew where that came from. came from Pam. So I told everyone, I blamed it right on her. I said, I know you never used me hear that expression. It's because I've been hanging around Pam. But you know what? It was just, you know, and I do the same, you know, if you hang around anybody, well, here you go. Let me use all of that to bring us back on the point, and that is, you say, oh, if I'm with an angry man or a furious man, I'm not going to pick up his ways. You can't say that. Because your thinking starts to get changed little by little. And first of all, your reputation gets impinged whether you do or not. But the Scripture says, lest thou learn his ways. And there's a principle at work there. And so anyway, I'm pointing that out to just say that this reputation can be impinged in a lot of different ways. All right. And then we did this verse already. Eat not thou the bread of him that hath an evil eye, neither desire thou his dainty meats. And we talked about that. Now, it's also in level 2, that here I'm just kind of going through this. It's also in level 2 that the strange woman picked up something along the way that you didn't see back here before you were a simple son. And that is, all of a sudden in level 2, she is presented to you as you become aware that she has some beauty about her. It's almost like when you're a simple son, just think of the stages of childhood, and well, I don't want to say childhood because you are an adult, but you know, it's almost like the simple son, he doesn't see the policy of evil from the standpoint of beauty. That's not what's going on with him. But when you get a little older, all of a sudden, you know, it kind of reminds me about the transition when boys are going to school and they have to sit next to a girl. Ooh! But there is a day coming when he wants to sit next to a girl. You know what I'm saying? Well, I'm not saying this is exactly what that is, but that's what it brings to my mind. The simple son doesn't, he's so one-dimensional, he's just gullible. That's what's going on with him. Someone says something with a straight face and he just swallows it, hook, line, and sinker. So there's a real danger for him. When you get to level 2, that won't work anymore. So when you get to level 2, now the strange woman takes on beauty. And that's where you find it. Take a look here. In chapter 6, it says, to keep thee from the evil woman, from the flattery of the tongue of a strange woman, lust not after her beauty in thy heart. And that's when the policy of evil begins to be attractive and alluring. And you look at that and you go, wow. And so the exhortation here is to say, don't do that. This is a danger for you at this point. Because it's at this place that the policy of evil, I mean, she you know, puts on her makeup and dresses herself up, and I mean, she really presents herself in a way that she's going to go after the son. And that's what happens as she gets over here. And it's going to happen here too, but there's a little bit of a shift here because now it's not to get him to quit, now it's just to ruin his reputation. And that's what she's trying to do. You know this already. The policy of evil has always portrayed itself as something that it really is not. It's that old saying I've said to you over and over again. When Satan comes to you, he doesn't come in red flannel jammies with his forked tail swinging around with a pitchfork in his hand. What he's doing is he's coming to you as something righteous. That's why it's dangerous. Those two things I put on the board that said, you're either going to determine your doctrine through your circumstances or you're going to determine your doctrine from your Bible. And if you do it through circumstances, you're going to go down. Because you can't tell the difference. He's that good at it. The only way we interpret it is, if it works out good for us, it must be God. And if it works out bad for us, it must be the devil.
My mother told me when I was little to remember what it said in the Bible, that God made this angel, a beautiful angel, that turned into Satan.
Right?
And so when you meet people or you meet circumstances, you think of that each time. And that's where your subtlety comes through. You start digging.
You know, that's good.
Looking behind to see what's going on. And I'm sorry, that's the way I've
Well, that's good, Bertha.
Terrible reputation, but that's what she told me.
You know what?
Remember, the most beautiful thing that you see may just be just the side of it. Look underneath and see what it is.
You know, that is great. That is great. And I'm glad you used that word subtlety to talk about that, because subtlety is what allows you to see below the surface. The only thing I know of that's just absolutely beautiful, that it's okay, is my wife. Everything else I suspect.
Yes.
Yeah, so there you go. Now, but thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that, because subtlety is what gives you the ability to do that. Because if you don't have the ability to penetrate below the surface, you know, we all knew people in school that they were after the trophy, right? You know, he was the quarterback, she was the cheerleader. It was not anything wrong with being the quarterback or the cheerleader, but it was very shallow. You know, which is why for a lot of those people, that was the best 4 years of their life. When that was over, it was all downhill after that. Okay, but anyway, here's my to get myself on point. Here's the verse that says exactly what we've been talking about. 2 Corinthians 11:14, and no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. If you're looking at an angel of light, you got to depend on something other than what you are perceiving to be able to understand what that is. Okay, so I think you've got that point, but I'm just making it again because it's worth making at this point, that attractiveness, that the way the policy of evil dolls itself up here is meant to grab your attention and to not have you look below the surface. Thank God in His wisdom, the curriculum says, I'm going to give you something to look beyond that. You're not going to be taken victim of. You're not going to get blindsided. You're going to know. If you fail, it'll be with your eyes wide open. So, thank God for that. Now, here's the next thing I didn't talk to you about, but it's in level 2, and that is Ephesians 1:3. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who hath blessed us with all spiritual blessings in heavenly places in Christ Jesus. And when we talk about blessings, you know what we normally think about? Stuff. We think about stuff, tangible things, physical things. And that's the way we think. So then we read this and we say, oh, these are spiritual blessings. I'm not discounting that you have some spiritual blessings. Somebody want to name one of them for me? Okay. Linda says prayer. You say our learning. I'm looking for something a little more refined. That is true. What are you learning? You could list it off, couldn't you? How about your justification? All the things that go into it. Is that a spiritual blessing? How about your sanctification? Is that a spiritual blessing? How about all the things of sonship? That's a spiritual blessing. We could do more than that. We could break that down even further. It's not really like there's a wrong answer here. But when he says this, he has blessed us. He's not, what the context of what's going on in Ephesians 1, blessing somebody isn't just giving them stuff. Here, Gloria, here's $50. I want to bless you. Did you know I can bless Gloria without giving her $50? Okay. All right. Okay, that's the anti-bless. Okay. Karen's talking about being blessed out. Okay, I got it. What is it to bless someone? Look at the scriptures, and let's just look at this. Look at this. Genesis 27:30. And it came to pass, as soon as Isaac had made an end of blessing Jacob, and Jacob was yet scarce gone out from the presence of Isaac his father, that Esau his brother came in from his hunting. He got the blessing, didn't he? Do you know what a blessing is? It's when someone says good things about you. That's a blessing. There is a blessing in the Bible where children come back to their parents and say, thank you for doing what you did for me.
That's happened.
Yeah, that's a they are blessing you. They're not giving you stuff. What they're doing is they're saying good things about you. Here's another one. Daniel 4:34. And at the end of the days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted up my eyes unto heaven, and my understanding returned unto me. And I blessed the Most High God. I praised and honored Him that liveth forever, whose dominion is an everlasting dominion. His kingdom is from generation to generation. You know what he was saying about blessing God? I bless the Most High God. Boy, I said good things about Him. I acknowledged His greatness. I extolled His magnificence. Do you know what you're doing when you brag on your kids? That's a blessing when you brag on your kids. Well, now I want to take you back to that, and I don't think I've got it up here again, do I? Yeah. So here in level 2, you find out right at the start that your Heavenly Father is now blessing you. And you know what that means? He is saying to all of the heavenly places good things about you.
It's our reputation.
Yeah, it's your reputation. You know what he's saying? You know, look at Gloria down there. She is doing great. That girl is smart. Yeah, okay, don't get the big head. Okay, all right. And he's saying good things about her. He said, you know what? She had a decision to make here, and she made a sonship decision that was exactly the decision I would have made. Everybody look at that. And you just think about this proclamation to excuse me, all the angels. That's what's going on up there. Now, this should remind you sort of what happened with Job. Remember? And the Lord said unto Satan, they all came present themselves before the Lord. And the Lord said unto Satan, hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one that feareth God and escheweth evil? You know what he's doing? He's blessing Job. He's saying good things about Job to those gathered host of angels. Now, I realize Job is not in the dispensation of grace, but he's not in Israel's program either. He's before the law. He's before Moses. He's before Abraham. Not in Israel's program. So you know what? If God would say about Job, can you imagine all the angels are gathered and God goes, have you been looking at Job? How there's nobody like him in all the earth. How would you like for your Father to be saying things like that about you? As a part of a very select group. I don't know that it's select. Maybe I should just say small. Of a very small group. You have the ability to have some very good things said about you by your Heavenly Father. And that's the second thing I want to point out. He doesn't give it to the angels to do it. He does it. Your Father's going to be bragging on you. And that's a great privilege, isn't it? Okay. Now, let's see. And we did that thing. Okay. Now, here's what we're going to do. By the way, do you think that when your Father starts doing that over here, and then it really revs up over here, making that known to all of the heavenly places, do you think the adversary enjoys that? You know what he's seeking to do?
Destroy you.
I talked about this to you in the very start of the lesson. I said, when you really begin to manifest your reputation in the heavenly places, your Father begins to do something that He hasn't done before. And that's to start bragging on you to all of the creation. But if you get caught in an indiscretion, guess what? All that shuts down. And that's why the adversary is after your reputation. He doesn't care if you quit. He just wants to ruin your reputation in it. You say, can he do that? He sure can. And then all of that broadcast of, have you considered my servant Bob? Have you considered my servant Gloria? All that goes away. You know, they're chuckling about that, those principalities up there with Satan. They're chuckling about that when that happens. But they're not chuckling when the Father is blessing us in heavenly places. See, it's not talking about He's given us stuff down here. People read that verse and they go, yeah, I got a check in the mail for $50. And they're going to use Ephesians to talk about that's what that is. Unless you get that check when you're up there, that's not what that's talking about. This is in the heavenly places. And this is the one that your Father is doing. Okay, now I think we've done that enough that now what I want to do is I want to go through this review with you to make sure before we get into level 3 that you don't have any question about this. I started to just say, does anybody have any questions about the areas we've covered in levels 1 and 2? But instead of doing that, I'm going to go ahead and see if you at least have a modicum of knowledge about what we've covered so far. You know these first 2 levels. We put those up over and over again, and I would think that you'd be able to draw them as well. But look, in the last year, we have covered a lot of ground. So when I say this is a very brief review, it is a very brief review. And I've given you 2 things in your notes. First, I've given you blanks. I've just asked the question, and you've got to fill in the blank. At the back, don't turn there. At the back of your notes, I've given you all the answers. The reason I've given you the blanks is because I want you to be able to go home and open up these notes and look at those questions and say to yourself, do I know the answer to this without looking in the back? If you don't, then you need to go back and take a look at that issue, because these are the very least of the foundational issues. So here's, under the introduction, here's question number 1. What is the third component of your sanctification? Okay, give me the other part of that. Your adoption, but what? That you're sons, right. So here it is. That you're a son of God by way of adoption. And that's what it is. Now, again, these are listed for you in the back, so I'm going to fly through them here. We've only got a couple of minutes left to do this. Number 2, since we're living in the dispensation of grace, why is it necessary to go back to the book of Proverbs? I really need you to be able to answer this. Okay, because we need to see, there's 2 things that work here. I'd have taken either one of them or both. Here it is. Because Paul does not explain adoption, information has already been given to us to understand what he's telling us, and we find that in the book of Proverbs. Does that make sense? Secondly, because the cry of Abba Father requires knowledge that Paul is counting on us already knowing. If you don't have that, when you get to Romans 8:15, you'll read whereby we cry Abba Father, and you'll just keep right on reading to verse 16. It won't make a bit of difference to you. So we had to go back because he's bringing up a subject that he's not explaining. And it had to, and we did, and by the way, I would take that answer that Linda gave us. He said, well, we went back to see the structure of adoption. That's really the answer to the next question. What are we looking for in the book of Proverbs? We're looking for the basic structure of adoption. She actually just cut to the core of the matter with her answer. But the reason we went back is because Paul didn't go to the trouble to reinvent the wheel by explaining it. He thought, you know what, you should already know this. So we go back and we're looking at the structure of adoption. Number 4, where in Proverbs is the table of contents for sonship education? Where in the book of Proverbs do you find the table of contents? All right, Proverbs chapter 1, verses 2 through 6. And that, we've been through that. That's that whole thing. To know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding, to receive the instruction of wisdom, justice, and judgment, and equity, is to give subtlety to the simple. Remember that? To the young man, knowledge and discretion. I'm just quoting through the passage there. That's the table of contents. Where in Proverbs are the exhortations? They run from the very next verse, chapter 1, verse 7, all the way through the end of chapter 9. That is the exhortations. The doctrine, I'm just going to give it to you, starts in chapter 10, verse 1, and runs to the end of chapter 29, because chapters 30 and 31 are prophecy. So they're not part of that doctrine. Okay, now we get to the adoption. Number 1. What is the primary characteristic of childhood? You tell me. I'm sorry? Tutors and governors. He's under tutors and governors. Anybody else want to add something to that? When you're a child,
Make decisions.
okay, Gloria says they can make decisions. What'd you say, Linda? Oh, they're not told why. That's good. Those are all great. Those are all right, and those are all great answers. Here it is. He's restricted, he's under tutors and governors, and he has limited decision making. And once again, Linda took my answer for another question. But anyway, but she's right. Because as you're a child, you're just told to do it, not why. But as an adult, you're always told why. Now, number 2, what is the primary characteristic of adulthood? Okay, Karen says responsibility. He is responsible. But the reason he's responsible is because what? Yeah, because he has liberty. There's the main component of adulthood. He has liberty. By the way, that's why, listen, let me just say this to you carefully. That's why you can't look at circumstances and say, oh, God kind of nudged that and bumped that and manipulated that, because if He does that, you know what He's doing? He's overriding your liberty. I'm going to give you an example. I hope you'll understand it. You do know, let me just preface it. When Billy and I moved here to Imperial, we planned on that being our last move. When this assembly got into Sunship, it is our last move. All of that changed. All of that, the way preachers used to look at churches, all that changes with Sunship. So as long as you're engaged in Sunship, we're here. And probably if everybody quits Sunship, we're probably not moving anyway. But here's the deal. And we love it here. It's not just about that. You understand, we love y'all. We love this place. We do. We love this place. Oh, I can't believe that came out of my mouth. We love this place. We love being here. We do. And we want to do it. Our heart is just here. And you know it's not because of, all the mountains and rivers and waterfalls. Yeah, right. That's right. It's all the blessings. Yeah. So, but here's now. My point was, I had to look back to get my point because I got carried away. Someone says, what are the odds that you wind up in Imperial, Texas, at this church? God had to do that. Listen to me carefully. No, He didn't. You understand that wherever I would be, that's what somebody would be saying. I had liberty. I had an opportunity to come here or not. This assembly had an opportunity to have me come or not. You understand? Those are all decisions. And we have a true liberty. It's not a fake liberty. It's not your father going, yeah, choose the one you want and I'm going to manipulate you so you choose the one I want. That's not what, this is real. He's not faking us out or hiding things from us. It really is our decision. You do realize, in spite of what God wants, Bob Butler could quit coming here today. He could go home and say, I'm not going back. And his Heavenly Father is not going to punish him over it. It will get sorted out at the judgment seat of Christ. But he is not under a performance system. Well, it would affect him now because me and some other people go beat him up. But other than that, God wouldn't be doing anything to him. You understand what I'm saying? I'm here because I made decisions that led me to this place. You're here because you've made decisions that led. I know it gives us this comfort to think that God was kind of bumping things and maneuvering things and switching the tracks and all that to get us where we are. But look, there's not anybody in the world that can't say that you have to. In order to believe that, you have to go to this book and find that doctrine. And you can't. You can't just make up a doctrine because you're interpreting circumstances. That is allowing circumstances to determine what you believe, not using this book to determine what you believe. Keep going back to the book. Right? Okay, all right. Enough of that. Beat that horse to death. It's liberty. It's liberty. Number 3, under adoption, how does God deal with you? Thank you. As an adult, He tells you why He does what He does. And there's the deal Linda was after a while ago. All right, number 4, the 3 basic freedoms an adopted son enjoys are, and I gave you that chart, and that chart had the high priest with his breastplate, remember, on one side, and had childhood and adulthood, and down at the bottom, it said those 3, do anybody remember what those are? If you just had to say it off the top of your head, what are the 3 basic freedoms that an adult son has that's different from childhood? I'm sorry, Eric? Yeah, freeders. Freeders from tutors and governors. Okay, yeah, freedom from tutors and governors. Yes, what else? What was the big thing in Israel's program? Why did they serve God? Fear. Yeah, fear motivation. That was the whole, so you're free from that. And let me just give them to you because we're running out of time here. Freedom from fear motivation, freedom from the rudiments of the world, that was the law, and then freedom from limited decision making. That's where the tutors and governors issue comes in, because they made all the decisions for a child. You've got those things that you are free from. Now let me ask you this. The law served as what to Israel? Yeah, a tutor and a governor. And that's the answer to the next question right here. That the law for Israel was a tutor and governor. And in this dispensation of grace, you're told you're not under the law, but under what? Grace. There you are. Now we go to level 1 sonship. Here's this part of the review. What constitutes phase 1 of level 1 in Proverbs? Okay, it is. It is the sonship orientation. What I should say is, where in Proverbs do you find the verses that talk about level 1, phase 1? Let me just give them to you, because you'll see what I'm saying. To know wisdom and instruction, there's your orientation. To perceive the words of understanding, there's your sonship establishment. What constitutes phase 2? To receive the instruction of wisdom, justice, and judgment and equity. There's phase 2 of level 1. Number 3, what is meant in Proverbs 1:2 to know wisdom and instruction? What does that mean? To know wisdom and instruction. Great. To know it exists and to know it has value. If those are the only 2 things you can know right off the bat, you have to know it exists. But once you know it exists, you have to know that it has some value. Here's the one I'm worried about. What does it mean to perceive the words of understanding? This is one, when I look back on what I've done with you, I spent the least time on this. And I was afraid this would be a gap in your understanding. What does it mean to perceive the words of understanding? Well, you are going to do that, but let me put it up here, because I think I didn't shortcut it, but I mean, we didn't dwell on it like we did the other things. Are you having a hard time coming? Here it is. To know that there's a structured, you have to perceive that there's a structured curriculum that's given to you that you're going to go through. That's what perceiving the words of understanding. That it's not just a bunch of jumbled wisdom we're going to go all over the place to find, but that there really is. Remember, we talked about it. I said, remember, that's what preachers always did. They always came up with, what do you need to learn first? What do you need to learn second? The Bible gives it to you in the order you're supposed to give it. And that you really do need to see this as a curriculum. And those terms are educational terms. Instruction, wisdom, all those kinds of things. Those are all educational terms. And so you really have to see this as a structured curriculum that's going to educate you. Okay. Now, I was kind of worried about that one, but does everybody have that down now? You see that in your mind? Okay. Number 5. What are wisdom, justice, judgment, and equity? What are those? Thank you. 4 decision-making skills. I need you to add something to that. 4 decision-making skills. In godliness. Keep going. Huh?
No, I was going to say edification.
Necessary.
Okay, let me just give it to you. I know you know this, all that's right that you're saying, but look, I just need you to complete it, and here it is. Skills for a prince, a king, or a governor. Now, that may sound like it's just semantics, but it's not. Those are the decision-making skills that a ruler needs, because that's the place you're being prepared for. Okay? And the second part of the question is, and where are they found in Paul's epistles? Well, Romans 12:16. Okay. Now, the next one is, where is your sonship orientation found in Paul's epistles? Where is sonship orientation? Thank you. Romans 8:14 and 15. There's your sonship orientation. Where is your sonship establishment found in Paul's epistles? Thank you. Romans 8:16 to 39. Level 2. We're almost done with this. What constitutes phase 1 of level 2? Okay, I kind of wrote it on the board earlier, didn't I? That kind of killed it. All right. To give subtlety to the simple. And what constitutes phase 2? To the young man, knowledge and discretion.
I think we know this, but the questions we're not following down on the.
I know, and we're moving fast. Plus, you know, I'm not framing the question. I'm just giving you the question, and we're not framing it. But you know this, right?
But the information's swimming around. How do we spit it out? You know.
Right.
We're just now trying to learn how to use it, much less communicate.
Right. But the only thing I'm trying to do is locate any big gaps in these first 2 levels before we move into level 3. Okay, now, number 3, what does subtlety do for the son? You answered that during the class earlier. Bertha gave a real good explanation of that. Subtlety allows the son to discern the finer points of the father's business and the policy of evil's attacks against him. He sees below the surface. It solves his one-dimensional problem. And why does he need it? Because the policy of evil is going to become subtle in its attack against the son. And if you don't have subtlety to count, you know, it's kind of like fighting fire with fire. You know, it gets subtle. You've got to have subtlety. Okay, here's the next one. What is discretion and why do, 4. What is the knowledge of verse 4 referring to? What is that knowledge? Oh, very good. Okay, that's a specific knowledge. Knowledge of the Son now is a reputation in the heavenly places, enabling him to have an impact and an influence there. Number 5, what is discretion and why does the Son need it? So here we are. Here's the subtlety, the knowledge, and now the discretion.
The ability to see below the surface.
Okay, all right, so here we go. Discretion is the cautionary skill that allows a son to see the repercussions of his actions further down the road than just immediately. Right now it may seem really wise. Will it be, you know, a year from now? Discretion allows a son to do that. And why does he need that? Because if he doesn't understand the repercussions of his actions in the future, his reputation could be damaged in the future. He has a reputation at stake here that every decision he makes is going to have an impact on one way or another, good or bad. Number 6, what is your conversation as referred to in Philippians?
Reputation.
Okay, Gloria says your reputation. I just want to get away from the citizenship thing. I hate that. So here it is. It's your conduct and behavior as is seen by and impacts others. There's your conversation. And lastly, what books in Paul's epistles deal with level 2 of your sonship education? EPC. I see y'all already got a jargon going here. Ephesians, Philippians, and Colossians. Very good. All right, now, I'll say this. We'll stop this session and take our break. When we come back, I'm ready to take you into level 3 unless you have a question about levels 1 and 2. If you do, I'll entertain those questions at the start of the next session, and then we'll start working our way through level 3. And there's some stuff sitting in level 3 you are going to absolutely love. I'm going to have more fun telling you about stuff in level 3 than just about anything we've talked about up to this point.